So page 4 will be a screenshot of your research paper. I'm not looking for content here so much, so this will be one of the few times in your college career where the instructor won't be looking as much as at the actual content as the formatting for a class like this. So you can see I'm showing the paragraph marks, and there is, again, a step-by-step process that will walk you through the entire process of creating the paper. You will be responsible for the content, of course, as well as the sources. On page 5 of your paper, I need to see a screenshot of the works cited. Again, this will be something you should be inserting from the tool within Word to allow you to insert a bibliography or a reference list. Again, I'm not really looking for a certain number of pages on your paper. I'm looking at the format so that I can verify that you understand clearly how to create a research paper and use the Word tools. So on page 6, you're going to have a second research paper on the topic of wearable devices. Again, I'm not looking so much for the content as verifying that you can indeed write a paper. I'm giving you some particular things that I'll be looking for. You can note these and be sure that you've got those addressed in your paper. And then on page 7, I need a screenshot of the works cited for that wearable devices paper. During week 1, I introduced you to an optional book called From the Garden to the City that talks about technology's impact on our lives as Christians. And at the start of this week's session, I asked you a question: which items of these 4 items qualify as technology? The answer is all of them. To explain, I'm going to pull some quotes right out of the book. Dyer quotes Doug Adams from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, saying that technology is often viewed by age. Technology before you're born is viewed as normal. Before age 30, incredibly exciting. And after age 30, the end of civilization as we know it. So technology, in many ways, is a tool, and our age often determines how we view it. The important thing about realizing that technology is a tool is that it has the ability to transform us. Technology has the ability to transform us. So take an example of a shovel. This is an example that he uses in the book. If you were to go out and use that tool for a week, your body would look much different than it did when you started. You would have calluses. You would have some muscles in places you didn't have before. The tool itself, that form of technology, transforms you. And a key quote he has in his book is that rather than taking our cues about technology from the scriptures and the outline of God's plan for humanity, we seem to always be locked in a cycle of questioning the really, really new, but accepting the just barely old. From that, Dyer gives us this definition, which I really appreciate for technology, that's simply the human activity of using tools to transform God's creation for practical purposes. So as we think of technology as a tool, it really is, in the right light, as a Christian, it's a tool to transform God's creation for practical purposes. The second question I asked you is technology neutral. This is an argument you'll hear quite often, that technology is completely neutral. It really depends on how it's being used or how people use it. And the answer to this is that it's false. Again, pulling from his book, he says that one of the most dangerous things we can believe in this world is that technology is neutral. When technology has distracted us to the point that we no longer examine it, it gains the greatest opportunity to enslave us. So he gives a more modern day example, just like the shovel has the ability to transform. Something like Facebook, and I'm not saying Facebook is bad at all in any way, but it brings with it its own value systems. In that way, let me explain, because it transforms our identity into something that fits into a web page. It prioritizes your job title, educational background, spouse, and hometown. Those are all some of the fields that you fill out when you make a Facebook account, subtly implying that those are the most important aspects of who we are. Similarly, a really good book, another good book that I highly recommend. This one is a secular book, but very good, called The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. The internet has the ability to transform our minds. He makes a strong argument using lots of valid research that when we go online, we enter an environment that promotes cursory reading, hurried and distracted thinking, and superficial learning. It's possible to think deeply while surfing the net, just as it's possible to think shallowly while reading a book, but that's not the type of thinking that the technology encourages and rewards. Our use of the internet involves many paradoxes, but one that promises to be the greatest long-term influence over how we think is this one. The net seizes our attention only to scatter it. Again, I'm not against the internet in any way. I use it constantly for everything in my job and for teaching. But it's important for us to realize as Christians that every technology, again, has its own value systems that it brings with it. So it is not in any way neutral. So to review, I'm looking for 5 total things for you on this week's assignment. And that is going to consist of 2 types of projects, a flyer and a research paper. The first thing I'm looking for is a Surf's Up flyer, and again, you can walk through using the step-by-step tool in the learning activity. The second thing is a commodity training flyer. And for both of those, I didn't make this really clear, but I want to emphasize it at this point. The actual picture is stored in the learning activity, so you don't have to hunt to find the exact picture. You can find it out there and save it to your Word document. The third thing I'm looking for is the first research paper, and the last one is the wearable devices paper. So for each of those, you're going to give me a screenshot, and I've laid out in this learning activity in this PowerPoint what each page should consist of on those screenshots. The last thing I'm looking for you to do is make sure you go out to the discussion board and interact with your peers and myself on how the assignment went this week. As always, I'm privileged to have this opportunity to lead you guys through this journey and learning about technology and the Office program. So feel free to reach out to me at any time if you have questions along the way. And thanks. God bless.